My volume is on. Hello. I'm really rocking this top knot right now. I wanted to pop on here real quick tonight and just share a little observation that I've had over the course of like my business, and something that happened today in a session with a client was a really powerful breakthrough. And it made me realize that a lot of us ambitious women have this one thing in common, or we have a shared sort of history. And I just wanted to share it with you because I think that a lot of you might identify, and you might feel like, oh, I'm not the only one, or oh, there's nothing wrong with me, but there's a solution. So the one thing I notice a lot of ambitious women share in common quality, is that we're very strong and independent. And I also notice that a lot of the women who I work with, and a lot of the women who I'm in sisterhood with, who are also doing great things in the world and who I admire and respect, we've all had a lot of, let's see, like our upbringing and our past has been somewhat challenging. And if it hasn't been like super traumatic, there have been some things that we've learned over time, and kind of get in our own way a little bit. Like they've gotten us to a certain point or a certain level of success, and then we kind of plateau with those that approach of doing things. And what I've noticed is a lot of the women I work with, a lot of ambitious women, we have this history with a lot of times our relationships to our mothers are somewhat uncomfortable, or are, I don't know what the right words are to use to describe this at the moment, but I feel like it's important to share, so just bear with me. Our relationships with our mothers oftentimes, or our parents, are challenging or have taught us a lot. I like the word brutiful that Glennon Doyle Melton uses often in her work, and I think that's a great way to describe it. It's been beautiful and brutal at the same time, as is life. And I think we've all sort of learned that in order to get by, or in order to be successful, or in order to break the chain of what we've known and what we've grown up in, like to break the chains and the patterns in our family structures, we have to do things differently. And so we start to, sorry, I'm like losing my track of thought because there are two things here. So one is that we oftentimes, so we learn that we have to be strong and independent, and that we can't really rely on other people, that we can't really trust other people to get things done. Like if we want something done, we're going to have to do it. And so we learn very early on in our lives, oftentimes as ambitious women, that we can't really trust anybody. We can't trust other people to pull through for us. We can't rely on them. We've been disappointed by parents or other people in our lives that are influential, and we just feel like, okay, what I've learned through these experiences is that I can't really trust anybody. I can't rely on them. I can't really receive. And a lot of times also we have trouble expressing emotion. We have trouble expressing and connecting to our true emotions around something. So we feel a little bit blocked, a little bit stuck in some ways, and this has been my journey for sure. I couldn't cry for like a really long time, and I didn't really understand why, but I came to understand that it was because the expression of emotions that I had seen in my life and my family was either explosive or completely shut off. And so I learned that being on the receiving end of explosive emotion, I concluded and learned that it wasn't safe to express emotion, and it would be an inconvenience, or it would be a burden, or it would be I could hurt somebody if I expressed any emotion at all. So oftentimes, I was sharing this with a client today, and I want to make sure you all know it. When we experience something, when we're on the receiving end of something, whether it's emotional expression or whatever it is, we will go to the opposite side of the spectrum. So in this case, if we experience people who are emotionally explosive or something, I'll just go with this example. we oftentimes emotionally shut down and we go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And then what happens is we kind of realize over time, like, oh, that might not be the best way to do things. I'm having trouble in my relationships, for example, or why can't I cry? That's weird. Or I'm seeing other women who are able to access and tap into their emotions and intuition, and why is that challenging for me? And so we start to refine that balance and go into that gray area in between. And sometimes we actually have to swing all the way back to the other side. So emotional expression that we found unsafe on the receiving end, so we shut it down, we don't express emotion. And then what we have to do is learn that both are okay and that there's nothing inherently wrong with expressing emotion. So one thing that you can do if you're challenged by this at the moment, like I have been in the past and like a lot of women who I know are, is to over exaggerate the emotions. If you're feeling emotionally blocked or shut down, or you can't cry, or you're feeling like you can't really trust, or whatever it is, go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum again. And what you're going to do when you're over there in emotional expression land is over exaggerate everything. Over exaggerate, like stubbing your toe, for example, or feeling sad about something, or being angry that you burnt your toast in the morning, or whatever it is. Over feel it first so that you can know both sides of the spectrum and make peace with both sides, be comfortable with both sides, and then you can find that happy medium and that balance that actually works for you. The key on the other side of the spectrum, though, is when you are in that place of like over exaggerating emotional expression. Sometimes that can be like anger, sadness, anything that's uncomfortable, or can be uncomfortable. You don't want to direct it at anybody. You don't want to direct it even at yourself. I think a lot of times we, as ambitious women, we've learned that, okay, it's not safe for me to express emotion, for example. And so what happens is it just stays in here. And what ends up happening then is that we get really, really hard on ourselves, and because we're blocking the emotion and it's just staying stuck, stagnant in us, instead of moving through and just having its moment and moving on. So because we're not expressing it, because we've learned or been taught through experience that it's not safe to do that, we haven't learned the tools yet to be able to process it healthfully. And so that's one piece, is the emotional expression. And the other piece is, being strong and independent are beautiful things, but we also need to learn how to receive. I think a lot of times being strong and independent, we tend to take things on that don't belong to us or that aren't our responsibility. And even like other people's emotions, or we take responsibility for other people instead of just taking responsibility for ourselves. And so we become like overcommitted, we feel stretched too thin, we feel a little burnt out, we feel energetically depleted, blah, 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 list goes on. And I think it's just really important that we learn a new way, that we learn a way that it's not detrimental to us to be able to serve or be leaders in the world, or run a business, or be in a relationship, or be in a friendship with somebody, or anything at all, right? Like this is make peace with ourselves overall, right? So I just wanted to share that tonight because I think it's really important. It's something that comes up a lot, very often. And I just want all of you out there who are feeling that way to know, number one, that there's not something wrong with you. You're not broken. Number two, there is a solution and there are resources out there, and I can be one of them. And three, that this is common and like it's coming up. And I think that there are a lot of women out there who, if you haven't had this realization about yourself yet, you may in the future, or maybe it's a different issue, but there's something that might come up that you'll notice about yourself, that you're feeling blocked or stuck. And I just think it's really important. I wanted to share it because it came up today. So ambitious women oftentimes we're strong and independent, and we don't know how to receive. The other piece of this is that when we are kind of like forced into a role where we are